Hi guys, welcome back to our OSPF labs. So what I was trying to do here is that to build a network where we can learn about point-to multipoint and point-to multipoint a non-broadcast network. So I have set up a lab, and before we move forward, let's first see what configuration is already in place. Now in this topology, as you can see, that router 4 is acting as an ISP. So if I look at the interfaces I configured here, you can see that I have 192.1 network here. For router 1 it's 1.4, for router 2 is 2.4, and for router 3 is 3.4. Now based on that, on each router, on router 1 you can see that I have one public interface which is Ethernet 0x0, and then you can also see that I have one loopback and I have one tunnel, and this tunnel is for the DMBPN network, right? So if we look at the tunnel interface, you can see that this tunnel is actually DMBPN tunnel, and that's a static tunnel, not a dynamic tunnel. I'm using static tunnel here. And if you look at others, you will see that they only have one registration which is going towards the hub. So router 1 in our case is acting as hub, and router 2 and 3 are acting as a spoke, right? So if you look at the interfaces, you will see that we have one interface which is public, then we have other interface which is going towards router 3, then we have a loopback, and we also have a tunnel interface. So we will have the similar configuration on router 3. So we have Ethernet 0x0. We don't see Ethernet 0x1, so there's something missing here. Let's verify that. Have I done? So there is nothing. So let me fix that issue first. So let's go on Ethernet 0x1 and put an IP address 10.123.3. Good that we saw. Always verify, always verify. As you know, I always verify before I continue, and let me save it as well. So let's go base IP addressing, load it. Let's go here. Let's go export. Now if I go on to the startup config on router 3, I should have that interface configured. So there you go. So now I can move on. I will do final lab config and load it. And now I'm back. So now if I look at show IP interface brief, exclude assigned, you can see that now I have one public interface, one LAN interface towards router 2, one loopback to simulate any network, and then we have a tunnel interface which is a DMBPN tunnel, and we can have only one mapping towards the hub, and router 1 is acting as a hub. Right now we are not running any routing protocols, so you can see we are not running any routing protocol on any router, and the idea is to run OSPF on all of these networks. Now because this is a multi-point lab, so what I'm going to do is that by default the tunnel is not and in OSPF perspective it's not a multi-point interface, right? That's a GRE, so that's a point-to-point. So OSPF takes it as point-to-point, and if you look at my previous lab, you will see that how this works in there. So what I'm going to do is that on all of these tunnels, I will say OSPF network point-to multipoint. Okay, so if I do show history, I do not have that. Okay, no worries. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to do this on router 2. So on interface channel 1, I would say IP OSPF network point-to multipoint, and that is it. And then on router 3, I will do the same. Config T interface channel 1 IP OSPF network point-to multipoint. So now our interface from OSPF perspective, that interface is point-to multipoint. Okay, so if I look at the tunnel interface now from OSPF perspective, that is point to multipoint. I haven't enabled OSPF yet. Okay, I just changed the tunnel OSPF network type. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna run OSPF on the 3 routers, and there are multiple ways you can run. So let's do the basic way. That router OSPF1 router ID is 0001, right, and network. So we define all the networks. Like we can define the network of 10.1.1.1 with area 0, right? So this is the only network we are defining here right now. So right now this network is active. So let's go on router 2. On router 2, we will say router ID is 0002, and we will say network 10.1.1.2 0000 area 0, and then we will also do network 23 dot actually 10.1.1.10.1.23.2, and this one is also in area 0. Okay, so we are doing these two here. We're gonna do the same on router 3. So let's go there, router OSPF1. Anytime you are not sure, like I did this lab long time ago, you are not sure, you always run this command and verify what are the IPs on your interface. So I will do router ID of 0003 and then the network 10.1.1.3, which is the tunnel network, which is in area 0, and then 10.1.23 network, which is also in area 0. So right now you can see that we do not have any neighbor relationship. Okay, and if you look at the neighbor, there's no neighbor. Okay, and this is happening because this is a point to multi-point network, right? So in point to multi-point network, router use 224.0.0.5 because in point to multi-point there is no DR BDR. Okay, there is no DR and BDR, and the router is going to advertise the next hop, whatever the next hop is. Okay, so what we gonna do, what we have to do is to make sure that we have some kind of multicast enabled on our tunnel. So here you can see that we have we do not have any mapping for multicast, right, in our tunnel configuration. As you see, I haven't seen here. So if you look at here, we do not have any multicast here. If you look at router 3, so you can see that right now we have one neighbor, but that neighbor is on this link, which is an Ethernet link, right? So let's go look at show run interface tunnel 1. We do not have any multicast mapping. Okay, so what we need to do is that, sorry, what happened here? So what we need to do, we need to go in our tunnel and we have to map our two clients or two spoke sites to this router. So I think I have 3.3, right? Yeah, so that is fine. So I have this address. Now you can see that the tunnel is coming up, but we have to do this on both ends, right? So in case if something went wrong, so I will do NHRP map multicast for 192.1.1.1, and I will do the same on the 3. Interface tunnel 1 IP NHRP map multicast 1. Okay, so now with that we should have the neighbors, right? So now we have the neighbor 2 and 3, and if you look at the routes for the OSPF, we have received the route. So you can see that we are receiving a route here. These two routes which you see, these are the host route for the connected network on which they are being neighbor on, right? So this is the address they are neighbor on. So they also add this as an OSPF, and you can see this is slice 32. So this is a host route coming in, and this happens every time you have a point point to multi-point setup. Okay, so now what we have learned so far, that it requires 224005, so we have to have a multicast. There is no requirement for DRBDI, you can see there is no requirement for that, so that is fine. Then we know that it advertises the next hop as is, so you can see that 23 is received from 3, so next hop is the same, and 2 is the same, right? So if so that is what it meant. And it's also meant that the host routes are advertised automatically for NLRI. So this is the host route to find out. Okay, so this is the complete thing, basic stuff for that. So if I go on router 2 and look at the OSPF, you can see that we have the host route for 1 and 3, and this happens by default in the OSPF point to multi-point thing, right? Broadcast and non-broadcast, both ways. Now let's do one more. Let's go do one more thing. And as you know that R2 connection towards the cloud, right? That's let's turn it to 10 megabit per second. So right now we know that router 2's connection towards router 1 is Ethernet connection, and that connection should be same metric from both the devices, even though if you look at the Ethernet 0x0, I just changed it to 1 megabit. So this is 1 megabit connection, and if you look at this guy is set to whatever the maximum is, just 10 megabit. So 10 megabit and 1 megabit, but we still see the same thing. And this is what happens when we are running OSPF on point to multipoint. Now to make it worthwhile, what we need to do is that we need to have the IP OSPF network type to be as a point to multi-point non-broadcast. And when we do non-broadcast, we also have to set up a neighbor command, and with the neighbor command we also can set up the cost, right? So what we need to do on all the routers, we need to change the type. So interface channel 1 IP OSPF network point to multi-point non-broadcast, and we have to do this on all the devices. So router 2, the other thing what we need to do here to bring our adjacency back is that we have to define, right now there was a neighbor already, but we have to define a neighbor. So let's do router OSPF1 neighbor 10.1.1.2 with the cost of, let's say 20, or let's say, yeah, we can say cost of 20 and cost of 10 to 3. Right now if we look at the routing table, you will see right now I'm going towards 3 because 3 has a better cost, right? The same way, if we change it to something else, we will see that if we shut down the tunnel, you see now it's up, properly up. So we see that, you can see that 112 has both 20 and it's coming from 3 and 2. Why? Because if you go from this direction, the connection goes with 10, sorry, with 2 is 20, I said 20, so with 2 it's going 20, and for 3 the 10 on this side and the 10 on this side, so it's also equally going up. So that is why it's coming from 2 sides. So this is how you do that. To summarize, we can clearly say in both cases, if you look at your IP OSPF, if you look at, we do not need a DRBDI election because there is no DRBDI election required in point to multipoint and point to multipoint non-broadcast in both cases. The hello and dead timer, if you look at your the OSPF interface channel 1, you can see that the hello and dead timer is 30 and 120, right? Next hop is the neighbor router. So if I look at your IP route OSPF, next hop for this is the neighbor router, so it's not changing, whatever the router is giving or is receiving. And if we shut off the multicast capability, we have to define a neighbor command, usually on the hub site. Okay, You can do it on both ends, but hub side is sufficient to do that. So that is it for this lab. Next lab will be the cost. So I will see you guys then. Have a good one, guys. Bye.